The other day I finally got the chance to watch The Gorge, which is the brand new film from director Scott Derrickson and was released on Apple TV, I think, back on Valentine's Day. And for some weird reason, hardly anyone is talking about this film. Obviously there were reviews and videos out when the film came out, but in the weeks since the film's release, it's kind of gone quiet, and I honestly don't know why, because personally, I genuinely really loved this film, and I wanted to just talk about it in this video because I loved it so much. Now, I've always liked Scott Derrickson as a filmmaker, whether it's his work on Doctor Strange, or his horror films like Sinister and The Black Phone, or even The Day the Earth Stood Still, which isn't necessarily one of my favourite films out there, but from a directing and visual standpoint, I have no complaints. That film looks the part. But I do genuinely find him fascinating as a filmmaker because even though he is best known for his horror films, he's always willing to try something a little bit different, like Doctor Strange or like The Day the Earth Stood Still. And The Gorge definitely feels like something slightly different, yet also something slightly familiar. If you've seen The Gorge, you'll know exactly what I mean. It plays to Scott Derrickson's strengths, whilst also trying new things and new territories that I've not really seen in any of his films before. There's a few specific reasons why I love this film so much, and the first one I want to touch on is the two lead performances from Miles Teller and Anya Taylor-Joy. Personally, I think both of them are fantastic in this film. The film very much rides on their performances and their chemistry together, and funnily enough, they're two great actors and their chemistry is genuinely fantastic. This is the first time I've seen a film in this genre and of this style where the main premise of the film hinges on their chemistry and it actually looks and feels plausible. Like, those two actually get on and their chemistry works, whereas there are a lot of other examples from a similar genre where the chemistry doesn't necessarily work, or it just feels forced, or one actor is trying and the other isn't really giving, and it kind of breaks the film because that's the thing the film is kind of trying to work around. Whereas with The Gorge, their chemistry is great, they're giving two very great performances on top of that, and it works as a whole. Obviously, these two characters are professionals at what they do, but there is a certain layer to them personally that is either broken or just slightly missing that the other character is able to fill, which helps strengthen that relationship and makes it that bit more believable in the long run. I also just genuinely loved the sequences where they're initially communicating with each other. I thought it was very playful and rather unique for a film like this, and yeah, it's a very charming way of getting the chemistry out of these two actors before they've actually met face to face. It's a very different way of doing it, and I thought the film really played up to that tonally during that sequence in the film. And actually this leads on to another aspect of the film that I absolutely loved, which was the shifts in tone and genre. Now, sometimes when a film starts off as one thing and then evolves into something else entirely, it's a 50-50 split whether that actually works or not, and the director really has to commit to it for that to work. This film doesn't just try one genre, it tries about 2 or 3 different genres all at once, and if that sounds like a mess, thankfully this film isn't when it tackles it, because it very distinctly splits the film into distinct sections that are each tackling their own unique tone. Now, I've seen some people use this as a criticism of the film, but personally, I thought it was incredibly smooth, and it just felt natural, like a progression of one thing to the next. It starts off as this thing, and then that thing just kind of evolves and transitions to this thing, and then that then transitions to something else, and it just felt like it was going one on top of each other, rather than an awkward segue into something else entirely. I think the reason why I loved this aspect of the film so much is because it genuinely kept me on my toes throughout the entire runtime. I honestly didn't know what tone or what genre it was going to try next, And that was part of the joy of watching this film unfold before my very eyes. It starts off as this sort of suspenseful action thriller, which then incorporates a romantic element. That then transitions into this Lovecraftian body horror sci-fi, which honestly reminded me a lot of Annihilation, which I think is why I loved that element of the film so much. And then all of that then leads to this action-packed finale that is incredibly satisfying if you've been paying attention to the story up until that point. These tonal shifts, for me anyway, never felt jarring. They honestly just felt like the general next progression of the story it was trying to tell, and I was all here for it. I just wanted to see what Scott Derrickson would do with these elements, and the way that he kind of blends one into the next I thought was masterful. And all of this weirdness is wrapped up in a little bow that is the score, which is courtesy of Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, who are arguably two of the best out there doing film scores today. I genuinely loved the score for this film. It is very reminiscent of other scores they've done for the past, especially if you're familiar with their work for Gone Girl and the Watchmen HBO miniseries. It does take a lot of elements from those scores, but I'm not complaining because those are two fantastic scores, and to just hear newer versions of those ideas and slightly warped and reworked to fit the tones of this film genuinely worked for me, and I wouldn't want it any other way. And again, I do feel like their score during the second half of the film, especially when the film tries to delve into that more sci-fi horror element, really works at elevating the creepiness and just otherworldly feeling of that section of the film. If you have a subscription to Apple TV and you have somehow not watched The Gorge yet, I cannot recommend it enough. I love how bold it is with trying all these different things, all in the constraints of one film, but it works. The performances are great, Scott Derrickson's direction is also great, and for a 2-hour film, I genuinely thought the pacing worked really well, and again, that pacing perfectly accommodates each of these tones and segments that it's trying to execute within the film. It never feels jarring and it never feels too slow. It just perfectly finds that right point to then move on to the next thing. And I genuinely loved every second of it, and I really wish more people were talking about this film in a positive manner, because it's very similar to films like Annihilation. And if you loved that film, I think you're going to love this one, because it's more of the same, but just trying a few new things on top of it. If you have seen The Gorge, then please let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. I'd love to have a discussion about it down there. If you liked the video, then give it a thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And I will see you all in the next one. Bye.